Ta-da!
Hey, we're live, you guys.
Awesome.
We have about one more minute, so we'll let people get logged on and give me a second to get settled in. So, and Ariel, if you just want to kind of monitor Facebook and LinkedIn for questions and let us know if you get any that are. You can always interrupt, like if we're talking and there's something that's related to what we're talking, just say, "Hey, a question just came in." Otherwise, we might just wait and let do questions at the end. And if there aren't any questions, no problem. This is how it started out, right, Bethany? And like slowly we gathered
Mhm.
people.
Yep.
Yeah. So, well, we're ready to get going. So it's 11:30.
Yay.
So welcome to Nonprofit Coffee Talk with Libby B. Super excited to be starting in this journey. It's all right. Everybody have their coffee. Coffee time. Ariel and I were talking. Ariel's along for the ride with me on this journey of nonprofit coffee talk and has been really instrumental in getting it going. So thank you, Ariel. She's going to moderate and bring your questions to us if you have any. So don't hesitate to just put your questions in the chat in Facebook or LinkedIn, and just a little intro, and then I'll about me, and then I'll introduce Bethany. So I'm Libby Villavicencio, Libby V, and I consider myself a nonprofit champion and really work hard to try to help nonprofit folks because they are tasked with the really impossible challenge of changing the world, making it a better place to live in, and doing that with a usually shoestring budget and not enough staff or volunteers. So, this nonprofit coffee talk is a way for us to hopefully impact a lot of people um, and give them some really great advice, inspiration, information through the guests that we have on. So, um, that being said, this is our first one. And our guest today is special, Bethany George, the follow up boss, who is all things relationship and has some really great information to share today about relationship building, which there's nothing more important than relationship building, whether it be in a nonprofit or a for profit or anything else for that matter. And so I would love for Bethany to introduce herself, and we'll just get started with our chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Libby. Thank you, Ariel. So I am Bethany George. I'm the follow-up boss, and I work with business and nonprofit leaders to help them understand the power of everyday connections. It really is what carries any organization forward. And I help people understand like their why in building relationships and then how to build relationships because in reality, a lot of us don't really know what we're doing. We're just kind of winging it. We're out there meeting lots of people, but then like not really anything comes from all of those connections. So I really help them dig in, go deep, not wide, keep track of those connections, and figure out how to be smart and strategic on how to create mutual benefit amongst those connections. So that's kind of what I do.
That's excellent. That's exactly what nonprofit volunteers and staff need, right? Is to understand, and especially if you're doing fundraising, but not just that, like partnerships and things that are also important. So, what do you think are the key things to keep in mind?
Um, Well, it's always really important to understand your goal in making connections. You know, lots of people go out there and they network and they have events and they just kind of think that standing in front of people will help them go somewhere. But if you're not really strategic about it, then it doesn't really gain the momentum that you're hoping for. And I like to joke that as a follow-up boss, one of my earliest services I offered was helping people take all those business cards they collected at networking events and besides letting them collect dust, I helped them do something with them. And step one was to organize them. Where do you keep them? How do you have them somewhere where you can find those people later? But more importantly, connect with them, and then know what that connection means. So one of the things I talk about is like, what kind of groups of people are you connecting with? And I kind of say that regardless of what organization you're in, there's three groups of people that you want to connect with. There's people that are, if you're in a for-profit, it's potential clients, but if it's in a nonprofit, it's probably donors, um, or people that you're going to serve. And then you have what I call power partners, which those are the people that you collaborate with, and those are essential. Sometimes we overlook those people. They need just as much nurturing and attention as the other group does. And then the third group is actually this group of people where it's like you have a lot of synergy, personalities, and vision, but maybe aren't exactly on the same track. Example that can be is maybe you serve individuals of a very specific demographic, but you connect with another nonprofit leader who works with like organizations. You aren't really focused on the same people. But if you have synergy with each other, then there's ways that you can provide introductions and open doors for each other and just look for ways to support one another. So those are just as important. And then honestly, there are people who fall in the fourth group, and that's okay. And those are people that you like, okay, so we've met. We don't really have much synergy. We don't really have a lot we can support for one another. We know each other. We're now acquaintances. And it's okay to acknowledge that that group exists.
Yeah, it's so important to be strategic about all that, but you can also get just caught up in it. You sort of hinted at this at the busyness of meeting people, right? You can go all day, every day, 24/7 meeting people, but
Yep.
if you don't do anything with them, nothing comes of it. So, what do you do? Let's get tactical. You go to a one-on-one. You're like, oh my gosh, this is a great contact, right? This is a great contact for me because they're either a prospective donor, prospective board member, could be a partner of our organizations. What do you do when you bring that card back? What do you do with it when you get back to your desk?
Right.
What do you do? What do you suggest we do?
Well, one of the things I always say is, oh, we're still here. You're muted, Libby. Um, cool. I just want to make sure everything's good. All right. So the first step with that is to recognize that that initial like one-to-one connection is critical to the entire foundation. So going into that meeting with curiosity, with wanting to learn as much about them, it doesn't honestly, I tell people if I have a choice between telling them all about my organization and having them talk, I would choose the second. I would rather them talk and tell me all about them, their organization, themselves, whatever it may be, because I know what I'm doing with that information. I know how I will use that information to continue to build the relationship because I'm not looking for someone who's going to act right now because most people don't. Like there's a statistic that only 3% of the population is ready to take action on anything right now. The other 97% needs to build some know, like, and trust. So I'm immediately recognizing that's where you're starting from.
Hey,
So
Bethany, I hate to interrupt your train of thought because this is so good. You're breaking up a lot. I wonder if it might be. I don't know.
we'll give it a shot.
Okay, thank you.
Let me know if it gets better or worse. I'm not sure what it is. I probably need to slow down too. Who knows? um, so after that one-to-one, like you said, what do we do with that? So it's really important. There are two really important pieces to that. I talk about the three elements of relationships, and so one is your why of why are you building the relationship? What is your goal? Um, you know, understanding that will help guide you in a lot of this process. Secondly, is to have tools. You need to have. Doesn't matter what your organization is. If you are meeting people on any regular basis, you need to have a tool to keep track and organize them because people leave it to here and think that that's a perfectly good place. Our memory is a terrible recall system, absolutely terrible. And part of building relationships is remembering important details, little things that we may not think are important, but are important to them. Is it sounding okay, Libby?
It's gotten worse.
Ah,
Ariel, has it gotten worse for you or is it mine?
It sounds great on my end.
Okay, then it's just me, Bethany, and I think you're fine. You keep going. It might just be my your AirPods.
we'll give this a shot too. See if that's any better. It maybe it's the dog running around. How's that sound, Ariel? Is that good? Okay, we'll run with it. So let's see.
I was like, talking about tools. I was like, where was I? Talking about having a good tool, good organization. I swear by a CRM, a customer relationship management software. I feel like every organization needs to have one. Absolutely. Sometimes it's challenging to find one that feels good because they can get really technical, but like find someone who knows them and then can integrate it and get you plugged into one. I do a lot of that with my clients. But then the third piece is having a plan. Number one thing people are missing. Absolutely. And what a plan looks like is, so I've met this person. Awesome. I've learned about them. Great. So what is it I need them to know about me and my organization in order for us to have some sort of mutually beneficial relationship? They need to know this information about what I do. They need to know I work with these people. They need to know this information. Similarly, what are some ways that I can support, like give back to them? Because it cannot just be a me, me, me. We cannot just take from relationships. It needs to be a we. It needs to be mutually beneficial. At all times, it needs to stay at that mutually beneficial level. If at any point you're wanting something from them and trying to take from them, that dynamic will be real obvious. And it's the number one reason why sales feels weird is, or in the case of asking for donations, it can feel weird. But if you can relate to what is their vision, what is their desire to interact in the world. I love in nonprofits, like nonprofits have such beautiful missions in the world and people back that up. So make sure you connect it with your donors and your board members and all those people. Make sure everyone is on the same page, because we all have, immediate needs. We all have great philosophical desires in the world. So like connect those things, but you can't do that if you don't know them as an individual. And that's where this relationship building is so important. And it creates a beautiful synergy when we work in that space.
That was amazing. Thank you. So, how do you say no to somebody who wants to meet with you? Do you say no? Should you say no? Should you just meet with everybody that asks? Or, are there ways to sort of ferret out? Because I have to own up to the fact that there have been a couple of times where I've been like, oh, why am I meeting with this person? More than a couple, lots of times when I'm like, I do my research and I'm like, gosh, it doesn't look like this is a really good fit for me. But I usually don't tell people no. I usually meet people once, because what's happened over and over and over is I get into those meetings that I think, why am I taking this meeting? And there's something there, right? Mm-hmm. There's I like the person. There's some kind of commonality between us, and it ends up being a great connection, right? That ends up being mutually beneficial for both of us. So, how do you know when to say no, I guess is my question.
That is a really good question. And it has a lot to do with your personality as well. So I'm talking to the individual leaders or whoever, might be watching this. I'm talking to you. Like, I'm not talking about your organization. I'm talking to you, because this is innately personal. If you are representing an organization and you're going out there meeting people, or you're in charge of meeting people, whatever it may be, you have to make the call. Absolutely, like you're saying, Libby, you never really know where a connection is going to go until you've had that one-to-one meeting, because looking at their profile online, or whatever interactions you may have had that were just kind of spontaneous, you don't really know who they are until you've connected with them one-to-one. That being said, all of us have limited energy and limited time. I like to joke that I'm an extrovert's extrovert. So I have more people energy than most. And other people, they're like, I tap out after X number of meetings in a week, or X number of meetings. Like, we all have other things we have to do. So we cannot spend every hour of every day making connections. And if you are, you're not going to be with those people anyways. So that's where it's like, the first step to setting boundaries like that is to set real clear expectations for yourself. How many people can I meet in a week? For myself, for my energy levels. And that will help you kind of filter a little bit. And then, you know, even I have a link out there that pretty much anybody can schedule with, but generally I like to have a little bit of idea who I'm meeting with before I've met them. So like if we have a back and forth a little bit, I can get an idea of like what the benefit is there. So that can kind of, for me, I want to filter out anyone who's just looking to like pitch me on a first call. I don't have time for you. Anybody else, I'm like, let's have a conversation and see what's available. So having those clear boundaries really helps. Being open to what's possible can make a huge difference. And sometimes if you're just if you're in a space where you're like, okay, I'm meeting lots of people and I want to give them the opportunity to show me whether there's more there, make your meetings short. Like I love a good 45-minute initial call because I dig in and I get people chatting and we have a great time. But if you really have small, windows of time and you have, limited energy, then make them 15 minutes. And if there's synergy, schedule another call immediately. Listen, I love it. I want to learn more about you. Let's schedule another call and have another private link for a little more time in order to do that.
That's a great point. Well, there are a few great points in there. I love the kind of limiting, like figure out what you can do, what your energy level allows. And the way I've done that is use Calendly and I have a 2-hour period of time for new connections. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's it. You gotta fit in there. And often I have client meetings. So, the amount of time is limited. The first year I had my own business, all I did every day, all day long, as you know, Bethany, was meet with people. And I had like 8 to 10 Zoom meetings because it was COVID, 2020. And it was exhausting. And I'm not sure it was the best use of time, but yet I also think that it let me meet a whole bunch of people and kind of learn how to network and all that stuff. So great point with kind of limiting and learning your energy level and all that. And then the 15-minute, I have a follow-up question about that because I was going to ask you about that. I had a guy reach out to me on LinkedIn and and we went back and forth a couple of times and he's like, I'd love to have one-on-one with you. And I thought, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then when I went to schedule with him, we scheduled for 2 minutes and I was like, no.
2 minutes?
His calendar only allowed 15 minutes and I was like, absolutely not doing it.
What
I'm not. The only thing I could figure out was maybe he could pitch me something in 15 minutes, right? And I just was like, I'm not going to do it. If you can't give me more time than that, I'm not going to do it. So I liked that you suggested the 15 minutes, but maybe with the point of, that's all I've got. We'll see if there's anything there and go from that. But I was kind of offended by somebody offering me 15 minutes. So do you want to talk about that a little?
Oh my gosh. I can actually relate to that real quickly. I had somebody reach out to me on Facebook, classic, friended me. Actually, I friended her because she was in a mutual group and I went and looked at her profile. I could tell she was a business owner and I was like, ooh, this looks fun. Connected with her. She reached out and was like, hey, thanks for connecting, and immediately pitched me. And I was like, I was like, listen, I was just looking to connect because I see your business. I love to learn what other people are doing, love to look for synergies. Like, I'm not looking for a pitch. She goes, oh yeah, that's cool. And I don't know if I suggested we do a call. She goes, absolutely. When would you be available for a 7-minute call? And I'm like, 7 minutes? And I was like, red flag. I need to get a little red flag that I hold up. Like, red flag. But whatever. I went ahead and like, fine, I'm available Friday afternoon, something. So we scheduled it, and I was like, so we come up with the time. I'm like, is she called? Like, I didn't give her. We literally just agreed to a time. I'm like, how is she calling me? She doesn't have any of my information. And like a minute or two goes by from the time that we scheduled. This is already only a 7-minute call. She calls me on Facebook, like the Facebook Messenger, and so she attempts. This was like this total fake, like, oh, hey, it's great to meet you. So tell me what you do. And so I give her a quick little synopsis of what I do. She goes, oh, yeah, that's great. Well, I help people like you, and goes into another pitch. And I was like, are you serious? So within 5 minutes, I was able to be like, listen, we're done. And that's 15 minutes is even barely enough time. Like I said, I personally do 45 minutes, and I know that 45 minutes can feel a lot of time. What I find in that 45 minutes is that like the first 15 minutes is us just talking, you know, and I'm really good at asking good questions and getting the conversation flowing. So we start talking about family and kids and my background, and like we find things, books, nerdiness, what do you like, whatever. And then 15 minutes in ish, generally, you know, one of us will ask the other, so what do you do? And so one of us will talk for a few minutes, and then, you know, the last 15 minutes, I'm like, hey, what about you? Tell me. And so we get that piece of it out. And it works really well generally. And we could talk, you know, a lot of times if we have that well of a conversation, we can go farther. But I know pretty quickly. I can tell from their energy, I can tell from how they respond to me, what I want this person to be. And then I follow up, you know, then I move into my plan that I have relatively well figured out. You know, I understand the ways that I can put intentional thought into reconnecting over periods of time on certain topics to kind of feel out, okay, will we stay connected? Can we still interact? Like I've hit it off with people, and then I'll send them a follow-up email, and I have a question in my follow-up email, and they won't respond. And then I'll reach out and be like, hey, can I get some information about what you do? Because I want to introduce you to somebody. Crickets. So then I'll reach out on like LinkedIn or Facebook, like, hey, love chatting with you, would love to do XYZ. Let me know when you're available or whatever. Like, and crickets. And at which point I'm like, love ya, peace. You're clearly busy.
And all this applies for nonprofits, like whether you're trying to recruit board members or staff or not as much staff, but donors, you know, you can't just ask them for money in the first 5 minutes, right? It's not, it's very similar to pitching somebody in the first 15 minutes with your, whatever you're selling, right? And so I just want everybody to know that, like, this is a relationship building thing. If you're trying to raise money, you know, people aren't going to necessarily give you a donation the first time you meet with them. And certainly, if you go meet with somebody that you're trying to get to make a major gift, that takes even more relationship building. It's really asking for a big investment. How important are systems in this whole relationship thing? You know, some people kind of stiffen up at the notion of systems when it comes to people and making friends, which is ultimately what you're doing. Is you have to think about this like how you make personal friends. You know, in the first 5 minutes you meet someone, are you like, will you be my best friend? You know, will you go, you know, it takes that trust building and getting to know. But talk about the systems a little bit more. And I will admit that for a while I couldn't hear you. My audio was breaking up. I got that fixed. So if this is a repeat question, please just tell me.
Yeah, so systems are fun. I find that there's two groups of people generally. There's people who love systems and will systematize their entire process if they could. And then there are people who are, I love relationships and I love people, and systems make it feel weird. And I live in a gorgeous space where the two meet, and I love it. And I'm hugely against vast automation. And the glory is that you can find a way, you can find systems that organize and automate the data, but not the relationship. And a great example of this is newsletters. I have a love-hate relationship with email marketing because people think that all you need to do is have an email marketing system, you grow your list, and that's all you need to do, and that's your relationship building. And I don't know how many emails I'm on from people that I've met, and that's the only interaction I get from them. And I'm like, I don't even open your emails anymore because I see your name, but I don't think it's to me. It's to everybody. I want to see an email to me. And my people know when they get an email from me, it's from me. Now, do I have emails that I send to a bunch of people? No, if I'm doing an event, like Libby knows, and I think Errol, I may have said this to you as well. I was speaking at a conference this summer. I sent an email to as many people I knew locally. I had an email that was templated because it was in a system. that I sent out to everyone that was local. But I literally went through and like, I want to send to this person and this person and this person and this person. So I knew every single person that email went to. And it had their name, and it was, and I was directly inviting those people. Email marketing has its place. Absolutely. It's a great way to get to the masses, what's happening with your organization and how people can plug in. But when you're building relationships, that cannot be the only interaction. And let me tell you the difference, especially in nonprofit space. If you're looking for people that donate maybe $5 one time or once a month or whatever, just a small amount every month, you probably get that from an email marketing. If they know a little bit about your organization and like, yeah, I can support that. I have a couple that I'm like that with myself. And then there are organizations that I've personally connected with that interact with me, and I know them and I know their passion, and they pull on my heartstrings because I get it. I relate to them. They get bigger donations from me. And when you're looking for, especially those bigger donors or those more regular volunteers or people that you want to, like I said, pull it into your organization and interact, there has to be a person relationship. It cannot be a systematized. But again, like to your comment, Libby, the system helps you not lose track of them either.
And that's key, right? That you're using your system to remind you to reach out in a personal way. So what I say to nonprofits when I help them with their fundraising, right, is personalized, right? You can send out mass emails, but you should make every effort to make those as personal as possible. And a good donor database CRM will help you do that, but you can't only do that. And I think that's a really good point. You can't just do that. You've got to call people now and then, or have a one-on-one with them, or whatever it is, just to let them know that you see them as a person. So that's great feedback. Do we have any questions out there, Ariel? I don't see anything on the screen. See if it's anything.
No, we do not. But I want to dial it back. So it's funny that you talked about the 15-minute strategy, right? When I'm on connection calls and I'm talking to somebody for the first time, I look at the clock. If we are talking business within the first 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, I need to dial it back. Like, how can I dial it back? Because honestly, like even though business runs our lives, right? That's not what brings me joy. And if we connect naturally and organically, the business will happen. And not just business, but some sort of energetic transaction will happen, whether it's monetary or not. Just because you're building that relationship. But this happens to all of us. We get so excited when we find that we do organically connect with somebody, and we're talking so fast when we first meet them. So how do you intentionally slow down that conversation when people find themselves doing that?
That's a great question. I love your questions. They're going so good. For me, I used the word curiosity earlier, and it is such a great way to come into any connection with somebody when you're like, if you're not super good at like having a conversation, and everyone's different. Like everyone's learned these conversation skills differently, and especially when you're meeting a stranger. So think about what are some things that are relatable to you. When I come into a conversation with somebody, I just want to know, like there's so much to know about people. So you come with those questions, and you could start out with silly things like, how's the weather there? That's a way to start, sure. But then, and offer, like ask them a question, but then offer something from yourself. And I think that's a way that we sometimes forget. Like if we're just asking questions, we're like, what's the weather like? And what do you do? And what do you have kids? And then it starts feeling weird, but you're like, what's the weather like? Oh, it's been really hot here. Yeah, me too. I'm sitting here watching my birds out my bird feeder, and it's been a lot of fun. The poor wet blue jays during the rainstorm yesterday were funny. Oh yeah, I have a bird feeder too. Like they find things to connect with. Your kids or your pets make noise, and you're like, oh, who's in the background? with curiosity, true, genuine curiosity.
Yes.
Tell stories. You know, I do a give and take. You know, I ask a question and I tell a little bit about myself. And that little bit about myself, personal stuff, helps them go, oh, yeah, I also fill in the blank.
Curiosity is great. Like authentic curiosity coming into sessions is yes, critical. We have one more minute, but we also have a real question. Bethany, do you have any recommendations about what CRM is best for a small startup consulting business?
I do. I have a CRM that I absolutely adore. It is called Pipedrive. And for anyone who wants to see a little back end example of it, I have a video on YouTube where I do a little back end walkthrough of it. What I love about it is it's fairly intuitive, so you don't have to be highly technical. I show how you can make it very much about the relationship, and it's very affordable. But when looking at CRMs, I'll be super quick because I know we're on time. There are 3 things I tell people to look for. It should integrate with your email because you want to have all those conversations tracked and findable. It should allow you to have customized data fields because every organization has specific things you want to know about every connection you make. I have links to their social media platforms. I have their website, their phone number, their email, but I also have silly things like, what are your pronouns? You know, what time zone are you in? Like important things like that. And the third piece is it should have action items, reminders of when to do what. And it should be detailed enough that when that pops up, you know, oh, I need to reach out to them and see how so-and-so is going. Oh, I need to send them that information. So that's a really quick, fast way.
Yeah, and you have to use it, right? Like you have to live in it. And that's a place where I fall down for sure. But, you know, a key, I think, is when you open up your windows, automatically open up your CRM. It should be open.
Yeah.
Those are really good suggestions. And then, so where can people get in touch with you?
I just took a sip. So I'm on most social media platforms. Bethany George, Bethany Ann George, Bethany Ann Rachel George, if you're on Facebook. But I also
Follow-up boss. Come
yeah,
up.
the follow-up boss. There's actually a CRM called Follow-up Boss that's for realtors. That's not me. And I have thefollowupboss.com is my website. So great place to find me. And I have social media links on there and all the things. So, and I talked about the 3 elements. So like, if you're curious about the 3 things I mentioned, I have a sign up for a short little email sequence. You can learn more about what those are on there as well.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's so nice to have you on as the first guest of Nonprofit Coffee Talk. So we'll be meeting here weekly, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. And I look forward to seeing you all next time. And I'll be getting some marketing materials up about that. And thank you all for being here for our maiden voyage. We're super excited. And if you want to be a guest, reach out to me. I'd love to have you. So thank you very, very, very much, Bethany.
Thank you for having me.
Those of you out there watching. And thanks.